Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Wemi Show. I am Wemi. We have an amazing show for you today. We are diving into the murky waters of toxic workplace dynamics. And let me tell you, I have read your comments to me. I have read your questions, and a lot of you are literally working in hell. So it's going to be a hot show today. Or you're working with people who could literally be the spawn of the devil. So lucky for you, though, I have Rebecca Zung here with me today, and I'm so excited to have you, Rebecca. Rebecca is a high conflict negotiation resolution expert. She is also the best-selling author of Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. Rebecca, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
As I said, it's going to be a hot one because I've been reading, there are people who are suffering out there.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot of work and you have focused a lot on narcissism, negotiating with narcissists. So hopefully we can share some tactics, some strategies to help people get through some of these situations that they're finding themselves in. Now, narcissism is something that I feel is trending. It's super trending.
Yes.
So your book is actually also right in time discussing this, but
Yeah.
I think people have found a lot of personality traits in their personal lives with people that they're dealing with and at work that they could never label. And now they can. So how do you spot a narcissist, Rebecca?
Yes. Yeah.
What are the traits?
Well, and I can tell you that for me, I had practiced law for a long time without knowing what one actually was.
Yeah.
I had heard the word thrown around. I think people use the word a lot without actually really knowing what the person actually is.
Yeah.
It's not a person who feels really confident about themselves, which is what you might think.
We always think
right?
they come up and there's this bravado and like they show up super strong.
Exactly. Or a person who demands the best table in the restaurant. I mean, that's what I sort of thought. I sort of thought it was this guy who was maybe the male chauvinist, maybe who was super impulsive, the risk taker. You know, that's who I thought it was, right? But it's not always that. It's really the person who feels the most shame, totally and completely empty inside. And so they have to fill this emptiness with external sources. So it might be image, it might be adulation, it might be trying to get power. It might be putting other people down, like degrading people. It might be passive aggression. But what they need is an endless amount of what they call narcissistic supply. And it's like a black hole that can never be filled. So there is narcissistic personality disorder, but it's a spectrum.
Right.
So people can have narcissistic traits and tendencies and not actually have the disorder. But if you happen to be in their world, they're going to try to suck that supply from you,
Right.
which is why you are left feeling totally and completely like sucked dry.
Yeah.
But they can never get enough. So it's like this cycle that can never be ended.
And that's what I was going to ask you is that don't we all have some narcissistic tendencies and
100%.
traits as human beings?
100%.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you are a perfect human being, which, you know, whoever that is for you, Jesus or...
You're like, you can do no wrong.
Yeah, you know, Dalai Lama, whoever that person is for you.
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa. Yeah. I mean, there's that on one end, narcissist on the other, the rest of us in the middle. Yeah, exactly. And then if we're sick or something, you know, it might be a little worse. Feel like we all sort of have our moments.
Right.
But as you get closer and closer toward that end of the spectrum of NPD, you're going to see more and more of those traits.
I feel like self-awareness plays a huge role in
role.
this, right? If you're asking yourself, okay, did that feel narcissistic? Was I showing up as that? At least there's some self-awareness that you are able to check in with yourself and say, okay, where was I on that end?
So many times people say to me, am I the narcissist? And I always say, well, if you're asking that question, you're
probably not, because most narcissists probably do not ask themselves
they never
that
ask
question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I am curious if you've ever had to check anyone who said, oh, like, because everyone also labels everyone a narcissist now. So you may set a boundary with someone and say, I'm not doing that, or you choose yourself or claim your time and someone's like, you're a narcissist. Have you ever had to check people on that and be like, that's actually not
correct
narcissistic behavior?
Right. So one of the things that I often say to people is it's that lack of empathy. It's that lack of empathy because they feel so much pain inside, so much emptiness that they're constantly trying to fill. It's almost like, I always say it's almost like they're starving, desperate, gasping for breath or air or whatever. It's like that. I need to feel this. I never
imagined it like that.
Yeah.
Like what it feels like internally for them to want to grasp for so much of the other person. Like you said, it's like a black hole.
It's this black hole. And it's almost like as if you have a toothache or it's like, somebody comes along and like pounds your hand with a hammer or something. And all you can do is feel your own pain. Oof. And so when that happens, you know what it's like if all you have is like a toothache or a pain, all you can do is think about yourself. Yeah. You can't think about somebody else at that moment. And that's why they have no empathy.
You can't see past the pain. And so there is no empathy. There's no compassion for the other person.
Correct.
Right. Got it.
Right.
So you have delved into this topic quite a bit and you are very knowledgeable. What kind of spurred this interest into this topic for you?
Yeah. And, I can say for sure that when I was practicing law, I certainly had a lot of people who were probably narcissistic or either as clients or on the other side, or maybe even as opposing counsel or whatever. But to be honest with you, the term wasn't really brought to the fore until probably in the last few years. I mean, we used to joke that every husband would say that their wife was crazy and every wife would say their husband was controlling. No, I mean, it wasn't until like the last probably 5 years that we heard the word narcissist as much. But it wasn't until the last few years I had merged my practice with a couple of other guys to be more of an entrepreneur because I was really more of an entrepreneur at heart anyway. And in one of my entrepreneurial endeavors, I ended up with somebody who turned out to be a covert passive-aggressive narcissist. And I didn't really know that person was that. I just knew that it just was pure hell for me. Yeah. And, it's one thing to be a lawyer. I mean, I had this massive, huge law practice. And I always say, I'll go to bat and be a massive advocate on behalf of other people. Yeah. But it's another thing to be in a business relationship as equals. Yeah. And things were happening where I wasn't speaking up and I wasn't sure what to say. And I felt all of a sudden where I was being made to feel small and I was being gaslit and I was being made to feel like I was crazy and I didn't have a voice. And all of a sudden, the feelings of when I had been bullied as a kid, I'm half Asian. And so I was bullied as a kid for being Asian. And I felt like I was this little kid, voiceless on the playground again. And I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about it and obsessing about it and waking up in the morning obsessing about it. And just feeling like these thoughts and obsessing. Yeah. And it wasn't until it was July of 2019, I went on vacation with my husband and my daughter to Maui, and we went to the top of Mount Haleakala, and it's sunrise there, and it's beautiful. And my daughter leans over to me and she goes, "Mom, oh my gosh, it's like heaven on earth. Isn't it beautiful?" And she's a teenager, right? And I looked and I'm like, yeah, it is. And I couldn't even enjoy it because all I kept thinking about was this narcissist who was just plaguing me. And in that moment, I went, no. You do not get to be here.
At my vacation.
On my vacation.
On my vacation. Like literally, oh my gosh.
No. It's one thing to obsess about it in my kitchen.
Right? You're in my house, you're in my bathroom, now you're on my vacation.
But not here.
Oh my goodness.
And in that moment, I went, no. Every moment I give this person, I am allowing myself to be a victim. Yeah. And I decided in that moment, I'm getting out of this relationship. Yeah. So the person who walked up that mountain was not the same person who walked down.
Oh my gosh.
And the root of the word decide is actually side. It's to kill. It's to cut off. And I realized that's it. I'm done. Yeah. And so in that moment, I became a victor instead of a victim.
You took control back.
I took
your power
control.
back. Yeah.
Yes. And I decided to finish my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, which is the book that came out before this. And I sent it out for testimonials. And one of the people I sent it out to was Robert Shapiro, who I didn't even know. But, you know, I was on Extra doing like celeb stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I had some level of cred, right? And so he writes back to my email saying, call me. I'm like,
okay, Robert Shapiro.
Hello?
You're like, Rebecca here.
So he gets on the phone. I'm like, is this the real Robert Shapiro? And I was like, his right voice, right? And he goes, well, I could give you a testimonial or I could write the foreword. I was like,
hello.
well, if you want
sure, if you insist, Robert Shapiro.
So he writes the foreword for me. Like my whole life started to change because I had decided to like get out of that. So then I started doing YouTube videos. Well, I started learning about narcissism. I started applying it to my cases. It was like I had discovered penicillin because I was like, oh my God, these people.
You're like, where has this been?
I was like, the people are starting to like do things because I started to understand the personality type.
Yeah.
And then January of 2020, I did my first YouTube video on how to negotiate with a narcissist. And I had 300 subscribers on YouTube, which is basically my friends.
Which is a lot for a lot of people, by the way.
Oh, it was all my friends and family.
I
had begged to like subscribe to my channel. Like, subscribe, I'm trying to get to 1,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it went viral for me. I had like 700 views at the time. Now that would be terrible.
That.
But it was like, but yeah, so, and I thought, okay, maybe I'm onto something. So I quickly did a course on it, which is the Slay course that I still have. And I just went with it. And I was like, I don't know if I want to be the narcissism queen, but you know, I'll go with it.
You're like, well, you know, if they're coming to me with it.
Well, you know, I was like, I don't know, but you know, but then all of a sudden I started getting these letters from people like, oh my God, you saved my life. You changed my life. And, you know, and so by January of 2021, I had 100,000 subscribers on my YouTube
Okay, we're
channel.
going to come back to that because we have some great audience questions and one of it also deals with change and pivoting. So I'm excited to dive into that more with you. But you two things. The first thing is you mentioned it was that moment of internal shift, deciding, right? That changed everything for you. And it just completely, you decided. And that's the thing, nothing changes on the outside.
No.
Until everything changes on the inside.
Everything.
And so that moment was incredibly important for you to say, I'm taking back my power. Yeah. Another thing that you mentioned was that you were being gaslit, which is another word that we've been seeing and hearing a lot of. Gaslighting. What does that mean to you? What are the traits of being gaslit? Which a lot happens at work with the dynamics that are going on in that environment.
It's when somebody tries to make you think that you're crazy. So I always think it's really the best way to describe it actually is where the term came from. The term came from the play or the movie Gaslight. And in that movie, the husband was trying to make the wife think that she was crazy.
I did research on this and I found the movie and I didn't know that's where it came from at first.
Yeah. And so what the husband was doing was he was blowing out gaslights and she would say, wasn't that just lit? And he would say, no, it wasn't.
It's in your mind.
And so that's where it comes from. So how it shows up is so many different ways. But it might be like a husband will say to a wife, I'm going away with the boys this weekend. Oh, well, this is our anniversary weekend. Oh, why would you do that? Well, we talked about it and you agreed. You said that it was fine. We never had that conversation. Oh, yeah, we did. We had a whole conversation about it and you agreed.
And you're like, did we have the conversation about it? Did I just make that up? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's gaslighting. Another thing with gaslighting might be you're like, you've got such a big butt or something like that. Oh my gosh, that's like a really mean thing to say. Oh, I was just kidding. I was just joking. Well, you can't take a joke.
You can't take a joke. Yes, that part.
I was just kidding around. Yeah. Why can't you just take a joke? You're so sensitive.
And that also shows up at work too. You say something, and I think especially hear from women, I hear from women of color who feel like they have to, you mentioned before, I had to make myself feel small.
Oh yeah.
Right? And a lot of
people. But
you
can never get small enough.
Exactly. Isn't that a quote? It never feels enough for the other person. And it's an interesting thing. The audience question that we have here, I'm going to read this to you, Rebecca, and see if we can help this person. This person says, how do you deal with a gaslighter at work? Not sure if this person likes me or hates me, if they are on my side or not. 1 minute we're having lunch together. Next minute she's making some veiled comment in a meeting. I try to be nice because I don't want the drama, but I don't know how to navigate the gray.
So let me tell you something. I don't know if you know anything about heart math. Do you know anything about heart math? Heart math is all about coherence between the brain and the heart. Okay. But the heart is actually 5 seconds ahead of the brain. And there's actually meditations that you can do to get your brain and your heart into better, coherence. And there's been studies out of Stanford where they've actually had like a cobra and a baby on slides, and people will actually have reactions before they even show the slides, because like your brain and your heart is ahead.
Wow.
So if that person is feeling something,
then there's something.
There is something.
Yeah.
And all the time that I've ever spoken to, now my SLAY program is in 167 countries. And I know this because we have an app, and I just looked at the app the other day, and we actually are in 167 countries. Have more than 10,000 people using it at this point. I have a high conflict certification program now where we're certifying professionals, either in the profession that they're in for work, or we help people become coaches.
Because there's conflict in everything.
Right. So I'm telling you, I've worked with a lot of people, and every single person who has dealt with a narcissist or a high conflict person, they will tell me they kind of knew. Even though
intuition,
there's a
something.
gut.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that I knew too.
Yeah.
But we ended up pushing past it. We ended up looking at other things. Well, there was a good opportunity there. Well, but they were really charming. Well, there was something else that we decided to look at instead. We went the brain instead of the heart. We went with that instead of the gut. If your gut is telling you something, it's probably true.
Yeah.
Don't discount those red flags.
Yeah.
We tend to look at the red flags, and then we ourselves start giving excuses for them.
Explanations
for
She was in a bad mood that day. She didn't mean it in the meeting.
Correct.
Etc. So to Rebecca's point is, if you think or sense, if you sense that there's something there, there probably is something there.
And if that person is saying one thing, being all your friend at the lunch, and then they go into the meeting and they're saying other things, it's because they have their own agenda.
Yeah.
They're probably trying to get ahead, and they're probably saying other things about you behind your back, is my guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because a lot of times people will say, well, this person mentioned, I don't, like the gray. And you talk also, I think you did a video about closure, and I've talked about closure quite a bit. I've talked about how I feel that closure is overrated in certain situations, but people are like, oh, I just want closure on this. What are your thoughts on closure when it comes to high conflict personalities?
You're never going to get closure.
There you go.
I mean, what are they going to do?
Can we say that again, Rebecca?
Yeah. They're never going to acknowledge you, see your side, come to your point. They're never going to sit there and go, oh, I see it now.
Yeah.
And yes, you were so great, and I appreciate all the things that you
Everything
did for
that you
me.
want from them, they're not
going to give it to you.
Yeah.
The closure that you're going to get is living life to your truest, highest version, most authentic version of yourself. Living life where you're supposed to be. You were born a whole, perfect soul, and your soul was meant to shine. And that is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And when you are in alignment, when your soul is in alignment with what God meant for you to be doing and in service to that,
there's no other higher level. I think that's why they say also success is the best revenge, but it's not even about revenge. It's just living your truth and living it fully
in
is the best way.
service to that.
Yeah.
And when you're in service to that, you're in service to others and you're making a difference in the world.
Yeah.
Then, these high conflict people, they're like a gnat flying around because you don't even care.
I know.
Like, excuse me.
There are very many gnats of life, as I like to call them,
whatever.
right? You're like, just flick them away.
I mean, I always think of like at the Wizard of Oz at the beginning when Glinda was like, with the Wicked Witch, she was like, oh, go away. You have no power here.
Imagine if we approached those gnats of life in that way, because the thing that you feed, right, is where your attention goes. And wherever your attention goes is where your creation flows.
Exactly.
So then you make a big monster even of people. Like, there are people, Rebecca, that I know that have dreaded going into work because of these high conflict personalities, where they have made work so miserable for them that they cannot enjoy what they do. They cannot go in. They're scared all the time. They have anxiety all the time. And that just means you've given this person your power. You have seen them as much bigger than they actually are versus the gnat that they are.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't know if I could say the B word here, but.
Oh, why not?
but there's like a saying. It's like, I was like, whatever bitches and the bitches whatever.
Oh my God, that's funny.
But it's how like Glinda the Good Witch was with like the bad witch, right?
That is a good visual to put in your mind, by the way, anytime you have that.
Like, okay, girlfriend, whatever.
Don't give them power.
Like,
Do not give them the power.
Here. And then the wicked witch was like, oh man, I'm gonna get away from her.
And you know what's funny is if you don't feed that, they don't respond to it like you're feeding it, which you've also talked about. Phrases that narcissists hate. So I want to hear your top 3 phrases, including the one that you just gave us right now.
Yeah.
Because again, if you are not paying attention, then they don't think they are much bigger than they are. So what are your top 3 phrases that narcissists
I mean, I would just say it's anything that's not going to feed their ego. So it's things like no, or
just no.
Yeah. Or I have no time for you, or that I don't agree with you, or it's anything like that. It's anything that's not going to feed into their
Is
ego.
it important to keep it short like that? Because if you engage more, then you give them an opportunity to suck you into the dark hole, right? So keep it short. No is a full sentence.
Well, yeah. So I have a response to like their text and emails and things like that.
Yeah.
That I call the middle finger response. So I had a lawyer friend back in the day when we used to actually use stationery, which was expensive in the day. And he would actually use entire letterhead to respond to other lawyers. And he would type it up with an address, dear attorney so-and-so. And he would put, no, period. Very truly yours.
I love the very truly part.
Yeah.
No, very truly.
Very truly yours. And then he would sign his name.
I love that.
And we used to call it the middle finger because it was like,
how are you going to respond to that, right? You can't.
So I say use that response for high conflict people because when they send you a wall of text or a wall of email,
which they do,
and it's designed to trigger you.
Yeah.
That is what you need to do. You need to start looking at them as if they are a toddler having a tantrum on the floor. And when toddlers have a tantrum, you don't get down on the floor with them. You look at them and you go, are you done yet?
Right. It's like, when you're done, you let me know.
Yeah. And that's what you do. So you just pretend like you're reporting the news.
Yeah.
And you just, oh, okay, I see that you are upset. I see that you're angry. We can continue this when you
are done.
When you are done. Because you always are entitled to respect.
Absolutely.
So
I like that. You are always entitled to respect.
Yes. Yeah. Well, here's what's negotiable. Contracts, issues, and terms. Here's what's never negotiable. Your self-esteem, your self-respect, who you are. Period. Absolutely. End of story.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah. That is never negotiable.
Yes.
Never. I don't care if it's your boss. I don't care if it's a colleague.
Yep.
Whoever you are.
In your relationships. In your personal relationships as well.
Personal relationship. I would say put imaginary Teflon down around you. An invisible wall. First, step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. Because you're completely turning that ship around, right? So very first step is take that step of, I'm not going to allow myself to be disrespected, period.
Yep. Self-respect is important. And sometimes you gotta teach people about how to treat you.
Well, you always teach people how to treat you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of harsh, but I always say, if you don't want to be a doormat, get up off the floor. So, you just gotta.
Rebecca, there are a lot of t-shirts in your future.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that one too, noting that for the books.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you just gotta say, I'm not allowing this anymore.
Yeah.
And you can say things like, I agree with you that we're not going to get along. I always like to say I agree with you, because then they hear I agree with you.
And all they hear is me.
Yeah. I agree with you that we're not on the same page. Right. I agree with you that this is not happening. So but you've agreed to nothing.
Right.
But, you can just do it like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's another one that I say. Or I say never jade, never justify, argue, defend, or explain. So never get into the thick of it. Never take their bait. Never go into that mud with them.
Yeah.
Because then they have you.
They have you. Exactly. We have a saying, I was born in Nigeria, and we have a saying in the Yoruba culture that I grew up with. I'm not going to try to translate it, but it just basically goes like, if someone is fighting with you and arguing with you, and you just look at them and you're like, we just say, what are they going to do with that?
It's
right?
The
like,
same.
I'm going to fight you over that word. No,
Yeah.
you cannot. And so it immediately diffuses the situation, because you are not giving them more to latch onto.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I always say, if like somebody's pushing, you don't push back. You just sort of, you got to take it away.
Yeah. Another thing that I want to talk about, Rebecca, is that I've seen that comes up a lot in both personal relationships and work: jealousy. And, we have these environments at work that breed competition, and then jealousy creeps in to that competition. So how do you deal with jealousy, especially with high conflict personalities?
I think that the thing that you need to think about with anything like that is not to think about it, right? Because then you feed it. What you think about, what you appreciates.
Yeah.
Right? And so you need to be in your own competition with yourself.
So just do
the best you can with what you have.
Yeah.
And you will continue to be rewarded.
Yeah.
I think the thing about jealousy or anything like that is that it assumes a world of scarcity. And that is not a world that I want to live in.
Yeah.
We need to think about the world as if it's a world of abundance.
The sky is big enough for all of us to fly. I always say that too. Like,
right.
It's not,
And that is, it's a false world.
Yeah.
Because that's not how the universe is. The universe is a world of abundance.
Yes.
There is plenty for everybody.
Yeah.
And if you live as if, then that's how the world will be for you, because the world will mirror it back to you.
Right.
The way you live, you will start to bring that vibrational energy and those types of people into your world.
Yeah.
And so if you feed that, then that's where your vibrational energy will go.
So it's not about you, it's about them. So
It's about them.
And it's not like anyone ever comes to you and says, I'm jealous of you, right?
Yeah.
It's through weird actions. And I always say this, the same thing that you said, the sky is big enough for all of us to fly. Like, there is abundance in this world. I have never seen two birds fly, like, fighting each other in the same airspace, being like, get out of my space.
Flowers,
like,
flowers just bloom, right? And they're both beautiful, or stars in the sky.
Yeah.
They just shine.
Yeah.
And one has nothing to do with the other.
Yeah. So focus on yourself. Focus on the abundance in your life. Continue to live abundantly, and whatever the other person is feeling, that's on them. They got to do the work, for that.
Radio waves can't travel with light waves.
Yeah. Well, you're just hitting us with them today.
Yeah, I wouldn't feed that.
Yeah, don't feed it. So you did a video recently on how bullies ended up being good for business. And I thought I loved that, because I used to work in finding amazing talent in tech and entertainment, advertising, etc. And I remember when I was working for this big tech and entertainment company, we called them brilliant jerks. And brilliant jerks, we did not want to hire them. That was part of this is the culture. We don't want those, but there are a lot of companies that bring on and nurture brilliant jerks. So how do you navigate that type of personality at work, knowing that the business chose that kind of person. I'll give you an example. I saw this video. This was a long time ago with P. Diddy, and he was sending it was like making the band, and he sent one of the kids to walk to Brooklyn to go get him a cheesecake. It was in the middle of the night. It was really wild. And he said that was part of the job. You have to learn how to show up that way. But people are like, oh, well, he's a mogul and he's allowed to do that. So there are those types of personalities that exist at work.
Oh, I see.
And we called them back then brilliant jerks because the people knew that they were jerks, but because they felt they were good at their job, they were hired by these companies. So they're always people who are encountering these types of personalities, but the companies hire them. How do you deal with those? How do you negotiate with those types of personalities?
I mean, I think people have to decide what's going to be good for them. And if they want to learn from somebody like that, then I guess then that's their choice.
Yeah.
But I think that as long as we allow somebody to be like that and we allow our society to be like that, then it's going to perpetuate.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think that that's part of the problem that we have in our society today. That we've allowed people to collapse being, brilliant or whatever with, okay, now because they're like that, they're allowed to mistreat people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I simply just don't agree with that.
And I was watching the Devil Wears Prada, the other day too, which it was very much like that too. And there are so many across fashion, entertainment, tech, etc. There are all these leaders that are allowed to be that because you're smart or because you're contributing to the company, that you get a free pass to treat people the way that you want to, which should not be.
Well, and it's also crossed boundaries into sexual mistreatment of women and all sorts of things, right? And I just simply don't agree with that.
Yeah. I think we do have to do better. And we'll talk about leadership, where that comes in a second. We have an audience question that I wanted to share with you. This person says, how do you handle someone who never gives you credit? I don't want to seem like I'm not a team player, but I don't want my contribution diminished either.
Mm-hmm. I actually have scripts in my high conflict certification program on how to go to somebody and be assertive and say, what types of, how should I handle if I want to get credit for my projects going forward because I feel that, this particular project, I should have received more credit for this or something like that. I mean, I think that there are ways that you can very respectfully say, I did this on this particular project. Here is what I believe that I did to contribute.
Yeah.
And what can I do going forward to make sure that I'm going to get credit? What metrics can I use? What rubric can we have in place so that it's, specific and measurable and I think that that's fair. And I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a boss, I've been a business owner.
Yeah.
And I think that if somebody came to me and said, this is what I want, I think that that's fair.
Yeah. So have a strategy in place when you go in to talk about that credit, right? Just don't go, because people are like, well, what do I say? It was in the moment. And it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to go back and have a strategy and then go in and ask for what you want.
Right.
You talked about being an entrepreneur, being a boss, practicing attorney. I am curious for you, and as we talked about before, the brilliant jerks creating these toxic environments, toxic vibes at work. Any proactive strategies that you have seen work so well or that you have even used in your business to create an environment that flourishes, that is not toxic for yourself and your employees?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have a charter. We have a business charter in my business, in my company now.
Yeah.
And it's very, very specific about what our mission is and the types of people that we serve and the type of environment that we have.
Yeah.
And we actually read it and we have a world of integrity that we live within.
That word, integrity.
Yeah. And it means something to me, and it means something to the people that I work with. And I think that really matters. And I think it shows through in the people that I work with. And I think it shows through in the people that we serve.
For people who are working in toxic work situations, I think it's important for them to feel empowered and not like victims. Any other resources for people who are in it right now that you would say, reach out to this or do this that could help alleviate the situation a little bit for them right now?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few free resources that people could grab if they want. I have my free Crush My Negotiation Prep worksheet. It's 15 pages. If people want that, they can get that at winmynegotiation.com.
Yeah.
I've had, I think, over 100,000 people have downloaded that, actually.
That's awesome.
And then I have my free Disarm the Narc phrases, which they can grab those. We'll use those for emails, for texts, for,
I can see
conversations.
people like typing it. The computer just like, no, go through this.
Yes. So
That's
those
awesome.
are free. They can get those at Disarm the Narc if they want those. And then obviously my YouTube channel is RebeccaZung.tv. And I think I have like close to 50 million views on there now.
Awesome. That's
So
great. I know that you've done a lot of mediation work, as well. When do you say, throw in the towel? we're done kind of talking about this versus continuing to go? Because I think for a lot of people at work, it's sort of like, well, this is my livelihood. Do I try to work it out? Do I just, move on from it? Like, where do you kind of see the breaking point based on your experience?
Well, if you're dealing with a high conflict or narcissistic personality, they're going to continually play games. They're going to move goalposts. They're going to say that they're going to resolve issues, but they're not going to. They're going to throw out, oh, I'll settle with you, blah, 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 but they're not going to really be serious about it. Whenever you try to get close to a settlement, it won't actually happen. And when you see that they're playing games with you, you just have to know that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's when you have to, with a narcissist or a high conflict personality, you got to figure out a way to pen them in. And so you have to figure out a way to, we didn't talk about the concept of supply or get into slay or whatever, but you have to build that slay strategy, which is have strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. And in the L, you have to look at the two different types of supply, which is diamond level supply and coal level supply. And that diamond level supply is their image and how they look to the world. And that coal level supply is that manipulating you. And so you have to threaten a source of supply that's more important for them to protect and defend than the supply that they get from manipulating you. And there's this myth out there that they just want to win, but that's not necessarily true. They literally enjoy the process of jerking you around,
Which is why you don't want to feed into the process with them.
right?
Yeah.
And so they're never going to settle that way unless you have enough leverage.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to you personally and your pivot and your shift, because someone asked this question. They said, at 62, how hard will it be to reinvent oneself? And I hear this often, I'm too old to start over, et cetera. And you were a successful attorney. You had your own practice for over 20 years. You walked away from that to start something different and build something different. And you built a 7-figure business that is rooted in the digital space. So any advice to that person or anyone else who is afraid to start something new, to start afresh?
Yeah, you're never too old. You're never too, it's never too late.
Yeah.
I mean, just do it. I think that, how old was Colonel Sanders when he started KFC?
Was he 60 or something? I don't even know. I think so. I don't know.
Super old, right?
Yeah. Well, I always hear the Morgan Freeman one, which is he didn't get his first role until 40 or something. So listen.
Right? I think Vera Wang didn't sell her first dress, and so she was in her 40s or something, right?
That's very true.
So I think that you just do it.
Were you afraid at all? Because another thing, and we talk about entrepreneurship a lot, with this show, is that this having a dream, starting something, right? Starting something afresh. Were you afraid, or were you afraid and then you did it in spite of the fear, or did you go ahead fearlessly?
Was I afraid? I kept my partnership with my two partners.
Okay.
So that I would have sort of my net for a little while.
Okay.
And I think that I just felt I was really tired of practicing law. Yeah. I was really, really beat up by that. And I just wanted something else. Yeah.
Did you grow up wanting to be a lawyer, or is that something that you feel were you pushed into it? Was it parents? How did that path happen for you? Was it a chosen path?
I don't know if you know anything about Asian parents, but...
Only because I'm Nigerian and I know something about Nigerian parents.
Yeah, my dad...
Some similarities.
Yeah. My dad was a doctor. I mean, it's like there's a doctor, a lawyer, or
an engineer.
I don't think
that's it with Nigerian families.
Yeah, it's something math related.
Yeah.
Otherwise, like I don't really understand what you do for a living.
What? YouTube? You have YouTube stuff?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you become like super famous, then
then they're like, yes, of course.
Yeah. Then they'll brag about you and everybody else.
Yeah. Okay, so you chose yourself and you shifted eventually.
Yeah.
What would you tell the younger self, the baby Rebecca back then, who's just going into this thing that was expected of her versus and seeing where you are now?
Oh, I think I would tell the baby Rebecca that she's worthy.
Yeah.
Just as she is.
I like that.
Yeah. Actually, I don't even think it would have anything to do with career.
Interesting.
Yeah, it took her a long time to figure that out.
It's called the journey, not the end, right?
Yeah.
So it's always the tough part. You got to be in that journey.
Yeah.
What has this path, and even including the pivot, what is the one thing that you have learned about yourself? Because you talk about coming down from that mountain, that was a pivotal moment, obviously career shift, pivotal moment, and there's probably been a lot, but looking now, at yourself and where you stand, what is that one thing that this journey has taught you about yourself?
Oh, I think being in service to others is really what God's plan is for everybody.
Yeah.
Just shining your light, and that all of us have a brilliant, beautiful, authentic light to shine, and that when you are in that zone, then that's when you'll take off.
Yeah. And you talk about God a bit. What part does your faith and your relationship, spirituality, what does it play in your journey?
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's always interesting. I ask people, I'm like, well, what do you believe in? What do you hold on to? Because when you're questioning the why of it all, when you're questioning so much, that's what you hold on to. That's your anchor. So it's important to know that, to have, some of that. And some of the amazing conversations that we've had here, I think faith has played a huge part in their journeys as well. Yeah. Okay, Rebecca, we're going to play a little fun game that we like to play with our guests. We're going to do a word game. I'm going to throw out a word, and then you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
All right.
Good times. Okay, leadership.
I would say service.
Okay. Support.
Gratitude.
Resilience.
Universal.
Technology.
Oh, I'm so grateful for technology because it's been able to make me tied to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does connect us, as wild as of a jungle as it is out there. Retaliation.
Unnecessary.
Okay. Conflict.
Sad.
Whistleblower.
Courageous.
Power dynamics.
Leverage.
Rehabilitation.
I would say for some.
It's possible.
Not for everyone.
NDAs.
Necessary.
Rebecca Zung, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. And do not forget to subscribe, to share. Definitely subscribe for more phenomenal stories with amazing guests. Thank you all so much for being here with us. Rebecca's book, Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win, is available on Amazon and where books are sold, right?
Everywhere.
Wonderful.
Everywhere books are sold.
Everywhere books are sold. Grab a copy. Thank you again so much, Rebecca, for being here. Such a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Thank you.